Up, down, up, down, up, down. It's not easy being a Jamaican lizard. Every dusk, every dawn, the male lizards compete in a push-up and head bob competition. Biologist Terry Orr has spent hours studying this macho behavior. For the first time ever, he's discovered exactly why these lizards do it. He joins me now from Harvard University. So, Terry, why are they doing this?
Well, these animals are territorial, and primarily the adult males are defending a territory, and they do so by doing these visual displays, which are the up-down movements that you described, as well as inflating this throat fan or a dewlap. And they do that to just let everybody else, all the other males in the neighbourhood, know that they still occupy their territory and not to intrude in that particular area. Now,
is it important to do it in a really obvious manner? I mean, is the bigger the push-up, the better?
Yes, so the idea is that it's supposed to convey information on physical strength of the animal. So, I mean, it's the same as a push-up in a human. If you can do a lot of push-ups, you're generally considered to be pretty fit and pretty strong. And the same idea for the lizards. So they're trying to convey to their neighbours that they're still big and strong, and so if they do invade their territory, they might get into a bit of strife because they'll get physical and a bit of combat will occur.
So if there's a lizard in one territory and he does push-ups, and there's another lizard about to encroach, does he respond?
Yeah, so what happens is that what they will do is there will often one individual will start displaying, say a neighbour will start displaying, and everybody in the neighbourhood will start turning around and pay attention, and then another individual will start displaying. So you have these sort of ripples of displays going through the environment. Now, if another individual decides to encroach into another male's territory, then that male will typically move down from its display perch to closer towards the intruder, and they will start doing these visual displays directly towards that particular individual as a threat signal to try and get them to move away from their territory.
Does a male who occupies a territory ever lose one of these sort of display confrontations?
Yeah, so what happens is that's the first line of communication. Now, if they can't resolve their dispute using these visual displays, what they'll do is they'll then get into physical combat. And that combat is actually really physical, and it's something that lasts for a particularly long time, and both participants have a really high chance of getting injured.
Right, so
now, if you're a wild animal, it's not good to be injured. So these guys really use those displays in preference to getting physical.
Now, there's more than one species of this lizard. Do the displays change or differ from species to species?
Well, that's really an interesting question, because there's a whole community of these Anolis lizards on both Jamaica and Puerto Rico, and they use these displays, as I said, in territorial defence. So the function's the same, yet each different species has a different way of producing those head bob movements and inflating that dewlap. So the question is if the function's the same as a territorial signal, why is there such diversity across different species?
Well, that's a good question that I might have even asked you.
Yes, well, so the answer to that is what I study, and we have a general idea that, for example, the type of environment that animals are communicating in. So you can imagine that if you and I were talking in a crowded room, there's a lot of noise going on in the background, and we would compensate for that by talking louder. So the lizards do something similar as well. They'll speed up their displays, and the visual noise occurring in the background, which is wind-blown vegetation. These animals are pretty small. They're about the size of the palm of your hand, so they're trying to communicate in a really complex environment when there's wind moving around. So what they'll do is they'll speed up their displays. That's one way that they can we can account for the differences in display across different species.
Now, Terry, you're also using a robot lizard. Why?
Well, the idea is that we can obviously have a look at these different species, we can measure the displays, we can measure the environment that they're communicating in, and we can come up with these ideas about what's potentially influencing their display behaviour. But if we really want to get into the system, we want to be able to get in there and manipulate it. So we use this robot, we can program it to do virtually any display, and we set it up in the environment as if it was a territorial neighbour to a particular adult male. And we'll program it doing different displays, and we'll present that to the animal, and we'll videotape responses. And depending on the responses and depending on the type of display that the robot's performing, we can actually extrapolate what they're trying to say to each other and what particular movements might be more conspicuous in some environments or some situations relative to others. So that's the idea behind the robot.
How do the real lizards respond to the robot lizard?
They respond very well. Basically, they are fooled by this robot. They do believe it is another rival male. So what they'll do is that the robot will start display, and they'll obviously orient towards the robot, and then they'll display in response. So there's this signal exchange between the robot and the live animal as well. So it goes backwards and forwards. It's actually very interesting to watch out in the field.
Yeah, it must be. It's a really neat relationship they have. Thanks a lot for telling us about it.
Oh, no worries. Thank you.
Terry Orid's a postdoc at Harvard University, joined me today from Cambridge, Massachusetts.